Wait for us to come out to go out live. Here that YouTube's working. There. Right, and we hit button. Hello, welcome to some Derps Talk About Games. I'm your co-host, Mango.
And I am your co-host, Buddy.
And today we're going to talk a little bit about Fate of the Furious. But before we do that, Buddy, why don't you tell the folks at home what it is we do on this podcast?
On this podcast, we like to talk about the Fast and the Furious movies. That's the only thing we've ever done on this podcast for the past 350 something episodes. We've only talked about Fast and Furious movies. It's like one of those like one of those like minute by minute podcasts. Yeah. We wouldn't even be like through the second movie at that point, right? 300. You know what? We would be.
We might, just because the beginning ones were a little bit shorter.
Yeah, listen, if we're in Tokyo Drift, I'm a happy camper. Anyway, so today we're actually Derp's talking about games, and we talk about games, but we're talking about Fast and Furious movies because I got COVID at PAX, so I couldn't go see any of the movies that we're supposed to go see in theaters, like Dungeons and Dragons and John Wick 4, and like there's a million of them.
But the highest priority is, of course, Fast X. So
yeah, we are true. Yes, and we're pretty close, right?
Yeah.
Let's see, Fast X. When do you come out? So Fast X comes out May 19th. So in 5 weeks.
All right, and we have
2 movies to go from here.
Fast 9 and Hobbs and Shaw, right?
Yeah.
All right. And then like there's the Super Mario Brothers movie in there somewhere. So,
oh my god, yeah, we're all movies for the next 5 or 6, 7 weeks at this point. Jeez Louise.
Yeah.
What a world.
We'll figure it out. All movies until we hit Diablo 4.
Yeah.
All right. So with that said, let's jump into kind of like initial impressions, pre-spoilers. Buddy.
Okay, what are your I want to hear your unvarnished opinion of this
all right.
First, because it's interesting.
So the beginning part of the movie, like the opening of the movie was like, I think this is jumping the shark. I am like not into some of this stuff, but it manages to pull me back in towards the end. I still don't think it's as good as which one? Which one's the one with the plane?
6.
Yeah, I think 6 is still my favorite.
But is this better than 5 and 7, which I think were the 2 under 6, right?
Yeah. Well, no. So 6 and 3 are my tops for different reasons.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
But this is. I think I like it better than 5, but I wouldn't like swear to that. Part of it is just like there are some things about this movie I really like, and there's some things that I kind of don't. Like there's a bit in the middle, and I don't want to go into spoilers here, where like they try and go like a little bit philosophical on you, and it's just very dumb. But also kind of the point of the movie is that she's wrong, and so that kind of redeems it for me. With that also, I was like, are they like kind of like losing that sincerity, which is kind of like what I like about these movies? Like, no, not really. So that's why it kind of pulls me back towards the end. There's also another thought that I'm going to say this, and we'll go into it in the spoiler section, but it's going to be kind of like one of those bombs. But it feels like The Matrix 4 was this movie if somebody like decided to take like the themes more seriously. This is a very thin read, but I was like, there were a couple moments where I was like, when she's doing when the philosophical stuff is happening, I'm like, this is bad Matrix writing. And then there were a couple more moments I'm like, this is closer than I want it to be, and maybe I'm reading too much into it, but I was like, this is kind of weird. But that's like a side conversation. We'll have that in the spoiler section. Buddy, how do you feel about this movie?
I find Fate of the Furious to be the weakest of the modern era, right? So everything kind of post Fast 5, mostly because I think it is a movie kind of being ripped at the seams by its 2 most powerful forces, right? On one end, you have the raw sort of super sincere drama as sort of typified by Vin Diesel's Dom, right? When he there are some scenes in here that I think he is acting more seriously than I have seen like Daniel Day-Lewis shoot some shots before. You know what I mean? Again, I'm not going to go into spoilers as well, but this guy, he takes this stuff super seriously. This is why I like the movies, right? I like the Fast and Furious movies. And he represents sort of one side of things. The other side of things is unfortunately represented by another guy who I like quite a lot, but I think is overbearing and the worst for these movies, and that's The Rock. So, famously, the tension between The Rock and Vin Diesel was so huge here that they don't share a single shot together. They never say a line to each other, right? They only ever talk like over a phone or like over a walkie-talkie or whatever. And part of that is because The Rock wanted to lean into this kind of like campy goofiness, and Vin Diesel hated that. And I have to say, at the time I didn't agree with this. At the time I just kind of was like, oh, well, whatever, it's all sort of fine. But going back and watching them all sort of like in order again, and particularly watching Fast 9, F9, okay? I was like, Vin Diesel's right. The Rock, I'm sorry, you're wrong, buddy. Like, you lower what these movies are and can be with your presence, and I'm kind of glad that you leave after this one, because this is the one that shoots off the spin-off Hobbs and Shaw. There's a lot of pieces. There's a lot of pieces behind this to like make it work the way that it does. But unfortunately, those two things kind of being torn apart are just like really painful. It feels like to kind of watch, because you're going through this whiplash, right? Where, major characters are dying, characters who have been in the series for multiple movies at this point, right? And then you're going to like an action comedy bit that feels like a mid 2000s DVD that my mom picks up at the gas station, and it's like, do you want to watch the Tooth Fairy with Dwayne The Rock Johnson? That's kind of like what it feels like. Do you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
so that's why I am not a lover of the Fate of the Furious. I also think that this is the furthest that the modern era gets from cool car stunts, which is like, to me, core to the sort of appeal of these movies, right? Part of what makes them so fun and part of what attracts me to them, right, is the stuff that's like in Fast 6, the tank. This tank shows up and it's crunching cars. And I could talk about that tank crunching cars like all day, right? Or the Formula 1 ramp things from Fast 6, just like ramping them off or whatever. Like that. This is somebody going, okay, these movies are about cars. We're gonna do real practical stunts with our cars. How do we do that, right? In Fast 5, you have the two cars with the safe, and you have them jumping the train, failing to jump the train. The thing is in the train. In Fast 6, you have the tank, you have the rampy cars or whatever. Even in Furious 7, which we talked about this, I also sort of thought was like a jump the shark moment, because there's some stuff in here that I do think is legitimately stupid and dumb. But there's a lot of, there's also just like a lot of stuff that you can kind of get connected to. I'm not really connected to basically any of the car stunts themselves in this one. Though there is one thing about the action that I do like that we'll talk about in spoilers, I guess. So yeah, there we go.
Yeah. All right. Well, with that, I guess you'd say it's not the strongest entry, but I also don't think it's the weakest entry. What is the cultural consensus on the weakest entry? I think for me it's still 4.
4, yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
The cultural consensus is that Fast 5 is the best, 4 is the worst, right? Honestly, I don't know. Maybe there are people who could go 9 is the best. Maybe I would even go 9 is the best. I've only seen the 9 the one time, and I didn't really rank it at that point. So I guess when we do 9, we will have a definitive ranking for where it is.
Yeah. No. Okay. That's that is fair. I can see that though. Like 4's kind of the redheaded stepchild bridge between Tokyo Drift, which kind of goes off in its own direction, and the kind of modern movies that kind of start with 5. I still, for my money, 6 is still the best. It's like, because like to your point about like this movie, like Dwayne wanting to move into the campiness, I will agree with you that like there's a level of camp to this movie, but it's like drenched in sincerity. Or there's a level of camp in like the series it's like kind of drenched in sincerity. But I agree with you that The Rock clearly wants to make this into like a wrestling match, which it is not quite. Like the all right, we'll get into spoilers. Spoiler warning here. Spoiler warning here. Spoilers for Fate of the Furious. Probably every other movie in the series. All right. But yeah, just to finish that thought, I would say it feels like the fight between like the escape the jail scene is like it's kind of like a cage match, right? Like a Royal Rumble type thing. That felt like it was meant to be like a wrestling, and it's also like too over the top, right? Like I feel like the stunts are easier to swallow when it's cars, because even though you probably couldn't do that, it's at least like vaguely believable. This is also like kind of like my issue with like landing on the car and it works, right? Like that's not great, but like there's a point at which it's like The Rock takes a point blank rubber bullet and just is like, yeah, whatever, right? And it's like doesn't do anything. It's like this is a little bit too much, right? Like this is kind of like superhero level, right? Also the fucking and I also feel kind of bad about like, or I also don't quite like this is when Dom is stealing the nuclear codes. He's in like this fucking like Punisher outfit with like a riot shield and a
Can I just go back to a second and say just 1 second? The sentence when Dom is stealing the nuclear codes as a part of this film franchise, which again started with street racers stealing DVD players off of tractor trailers. That's where this started. And Dom is stealing the nuclear codes. Yeah, that's a real thing.
Nuclear codes, easier to carry than DVD players. So, Russian nuclear codes, which, definitely. I mean, there's a part of me that just wants to go make any sense. Why would the defense minister have nuclear codes?
Yeah, Russian nuclear codes in the United States.
In a motorcade.
In a motorcade in the United States.
Why would a Russian, like, maybe if it was like the president of Russia, I'd get it. But like, why is there a motorcade for a defense minister? Why any of this, right? Like,
yeah. I am with you right down the line, 100% of the way.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, like, I don't mind some of like the ridiculousness. For instance, the chain of logic typically works for me, movie to movie, but this one makes it harder for a couple of reasons. But the chain of logic of, okay, in 4, we're taking down a drug cartel, right? It's using Los Angeles street racers. Okay, I can buy that, right? Dom is enmeshed in the street racing culture. Brian is an FBI agent. It wouldn't make a ton of sense. It would be the DEA, right? But sure, we'll just let it go and say I understand how law enforcement and this criminal might be involved in taking down this like major criminal operation.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then you go to Fast 5 and they're all criminals and now they are robbing, another criminal. Okay, I'm on board for that, right? We haven't quite jumped it out yet. But then with Shaw in Fast and Furious 6, Shaw is explicitly an international criminal, right?
Right.
And he's an international criminal that's vaguely related to Luke Hobbs, and Hobbs recruits the Fast and Furious team to take him down. And then you later find out that he has deeper connections to Braga, right? Who is the person they took down in 4. Okay, the chain, that chain, like, gets me far enough. Yeah, exactly, right? Even though I am going from fundamentally street racers in 4 to fighting international terrorists in 6 or whatever. But there's a part in this movie that just like, I think is insane where,
actually it was all related to Cypher.
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. Where Cypher says that Dom took out two of my previous teams, right? And you find out that Shaw and the Warlord from Furious 7, right?
Yeah.
Were just like working for Cypher. And that's what cracks the facade and sort of like ruins it for me. Because it's just like, you know what? Like, hold on, this doesn't make sense. This is not real, right? Like, we can all agree this is ridiculous. And I don't know what it is about those, but it was that line that just like caught me like a fish hook in my cheek, and I just couldn't go any further.
Yep. No, I definitely feel that. I mean, part of the this happened to us with Free Guy as well. Is kind of like, I know enough about how things work that like the hacking stuff, like, it was bad in the last movie, it's worse in this one. Although we get a great demonstration of why like hacking in movies is never great, right? It's like, two people like keyboards, like, oh, she's really good, and then we get like the kind of like we get these weird moments. To go back to the Matrix point, when she, like, first of all, 0-day exploit, that was like decent use of the term. I don't know that it would let you. I'm in fact positive it would not let you automatically drive cars, especially when this movie was shot. But like, that was the correct use of the term. Okay with that. But this is also the thing that made me think of the Matrix 4, because like, it's like, make it rain and the cars start committing suicide. And I'm like, oh, this is like that scene in the Matrix where they start jumping out of windows.
I forgot about that scene, but that's true. That is, I guess, a pretty conceptually similar.
Yeah, and it's not that close, but like, it feels like our villain Cypher. Cypher's the name of the villain in the first Matrix movie, isn't it?
True.
Yeah, it feels like Cypher was like pulled out of like was like a bad Matrix villain in some ways, or like,
yeah, because she has this whole thing about choice or whatever,
which is like like fate versus choice is like the whole theme of the Matrix. We did our Matrix theories, right?
Yep.
But like, it was like this feels like a weird appropriation of that. But like I said, it came around at the end because Dom's just like, no, that's dumb, and like kicks it in the head, and and that brings it back.
He has a line in here that I like quite a lot, which is the like, the problem with like taming a tiger is you got to keep your foot on its neck or whatever. Yeah. And to me, that seems like a much better sort of philosophical underpinning for what Cypher is going for and kind of the risks that she's undertaking and all this stuff about choice. I was just like, I don't know, man. Miss me with some of that stuff. But I do like, I'm not mad about the plot of this movie all that much, right? Like, the general sort of movement of plot point for plot point is not a huge deal for me. It is mostly about this whiplash of tone between, you essentially sort of have these Dom scenes where, like, he's with Cypher and you can tell he's like just like bristling with this like, macho rage that is best typified by the way that his lips get real tight when he delivers his lines. You know what I mean? Like, and then I feel like I am walking into, honestly, like a bad Marvel movie, right? With some of these like kind of bathos moments or whatever.
I think Roman's the worst he's ever been. In this movie.
Really? Okay, funnily enough, I actually do like Roman in this movie, and I like his bits quite a lot in this movie compared to some of the previous movies. But yeah,
I mean, this is like a CinemaSins level complaint, but he's like, I want the orange car, and Little Nobody's like, no, it has to be low profile. And then in the next scene, Letty is driving, a bright red fucking car, right?
Yeah, and he's driving a Bentley. Also, okay, I don't want to be too mean. let me give this mention because this is part of what's fun about this movie to me, which is that they are like, it's like they are expressing themselves via superheroics with their cars, right? I love that this is sort of the archetypal moment where everyone has their kind of car and all of their cars have like not like quite superhero moments, but it's like when The Rock is driving his big truck, he's doing big truck things, right? Like crashing through all of the scaffolding that just fell, right? Or Letty does this thing where, you know, she's driving on like two wheels,
Wheels, yeah.
and then it comes out like all of that kind of stuff. I think is super fun. The insane amount of horsepower in Dom's car that lets him like 1v5 when they're doing their thing with all of the
When they're trying to draw and quarter the car.
yeah, exactly. It's just like all of that stuff works like gangbusters for me, and I do quite like it. Just in terms of like setup. Again, I don't think that they did anything really like neat or interesting with them, like on a stunts level. Because I kind of mostly think I don't like the submarine thing at the end. I mostly think the submarine stuff is kind of hacky and bad. And the New York stuff I'm half and half on. I do like the concept of the zombie cars, but I don't like the execution, really, right? And I think a lot of that just comes down to practical versus CGI. I'm sure that there were plenty of practical cars in there. One of the things that's true about earlier and later versions of the movie, or of the series, is that they mix a lot of practical and CGI stuff, right? Like there is stuff, like one of the things that they do in Fast 9, I'm not going to spoil any details, but they basically show a car crash, and the way that they filmed that car crash was they actually just flipped a car like a million times, right? With nobody in it, right? And then they transpose CGI kind of like all around it, so it's in a different environment, right? Basically crashing this car in front of a green screen, and using the CGI to kind of like embellish it or whatever. I think that works great. But there's just like a lot of stuff in here that's just like, I don't know. The zombie car stuff was a little ridiculous, and there's no good car like gimmicks, I guess. You know, in the same way that like the tank is a good gimmick, or the racer ramp cars are just like a good gimmick to add to, you know, to make your stunts like cool and interesting. So yeah. And part of that is that Roman drives that stupid Lamborghini on the fucking ice lake and he keeps spinning out, which I thought is legit. I like that, to me is like legitimately funny. Like,
Yeah, no, I mean, he gets his cool moment, right? He gets his like, I'm tired of this shit, and shoots everybody. It's like, okay,
yep,
he always gets one.
the thing. Yeah, that is the thing I like about Roman in this one. And I do like that he is not explicitly like a coward like he was with the airplane one in Seven bothers me because it is explicitly cowardice, right? He is you know, he is being afraid or whatever. But yeah.
Yeah. Also, the torpedo scene is much less absurd than I remember it from the trailers. So, you know, I think that's a point in his favor, actually, right? Because like, you know, he kind of just like shoves it, which is much more reasonable than, you know, I in my mind's eye, right? It's like he like heaves the torpedo at a
with his bare hands.
Yeah. I mean, it's still ridiculous, but it's like much more reasonable than it was. But yeah, it's you know, like seeing Tormund in another role. That was like, I was like, yeah, that's the guy from Game of Thrones. Where's the big woman? Or is the big woman, you know, that line that everybody loves.
I like Tormund better than most mini bosses.
Yeah, no,
I feel like there's a lot of mini bosses in these movies, and he is probably among the best of them.
Yeah, no, I agree. He's got the appropriate amount of like, I honestly like him better than Cypher, right? Because Cypher just like I said, comes off as kind of like, you know, like some weird e-girl kind of almost, right? Like, but for the scene where she goes toe to toe with Ramsey, right? Like, I was like, oh, she's the world's greatest hacker, but it's actually like an Asian dude who's like doing all of the work, right? Like, but she does have a scene where she actually like goes toe to toe, I guess, because she needed to hack fight Ramsey, because that's how that works.
You know, like I don't mind that stuff.
Yeah,
because you know, like Ramsey's thing is that she's like a hacker or whatever. You know, it is what it is.
Like the kind of like a Ramsey. What's Ludacris's character's name?
Tej.
Tej. The kind of like Ramsey Tej kind of like, hardware versus software kind of thing is like we it feels to me like if you asked a meathead what the difference between like male and female nerds are, right? It'd be like, so males do hardware and the females do software, right? It feels like a very kind of like, dogs are boys and cats are girls level take. But
Women are from Mars, men are from Venus. Yeah.
yeah.
Or the reverse of that, but whatever.
Yeah, whatever, right? Like, but it's a fun dynamic, right? Like, I don't really like buy the love triangle thing at all, right? It feels like it's got to be Tej, like maybe Jason Statham, but like Roman's just being himself.
This is another one of my hot takes. I think that Tej and Ramsey kind of need to hook up because the group lacks a sort of like side couple in the way that I think Han and Giselle provided, which sense. I liked about Fast 5 and Fast 6, right? And I just wish that they were like, they were paired off in this one. There was plenty of setup in the last one, right? You don't even need to explain it, right? You just they're together. Roman is pissy about it. Write a couple of lines like that and let it go. I will say that there are some aspects of the dynamics to the team that are widely criticized. Have you ever heard of the Justice for Han movement? I think I like previewed this a little.
No, I have not heard of the Justice for Han. Oh, okay. Well, is it because Jason Statham kills him and they decide he's a friend now?
Yeah, yes, actually, yeah. In the Fast and Furious fandom, there was this thing that happened after Fate of the Furious called hashtag Justice for Han, which was through most of the movie, it's actually not a big deal. Because Dom, who is sort of the archetypal dad of the family and the person who's most protective of it, right, is sort of missing, and so Mr. Nobody sort of steps into that role, and he kind of forces Shaw in to the crew, and they're all working together, right? But like, it doesn't feel like the family, right?
I mean, he gets rehabilitated pretty quickly, though, right? Like,
absolutely. Oh no, he absolutely does. I agree with that. But just like the setup is not that big of a deal. The problem is the thing where Vin Diesel's whole plan is about appealing to Shaw's mom, Helen Mirren, in that bar, who, by the way, I do love her. And I love that whole interaction. And I would cherish those scenes, even though I remember at the time thinking, where the fuck is this going? I don't get it, right? The fact that he would be so willing, right, to essentially ally himself, not just with the guy who killed Han, right? Not just with the guy who like brainwashed Letty, right? But that they are instrumental to his plan, and then crucially, that Deckard Shaw is invited to the family barbecue, which is also not in Los Angeles. It's in Brooklyn this time, on a rooftop in Brooklyn. Everybody was so mad about all of this. Is like all of that is really problematic. And that's where the Justice for Han movement came from. And then when Justin Lin was brought back, so Justin Lin was the director on 3, 4, 5, 6. When he was brought back for 9, he showed up to his first day on set with a hashtag Justice shirt, and everybody flipped the fuck out because it was kind of like everybody knew that he knew that Justice for Han was like legit, and they had to like deal with this, right? So yeah, this is also a piece of what is like weird about this movie and kind of frustrating. If you are someone who is invested in the lore and the mythos.
Yeah. I mean, I was thinking that was, kind of like I said, these movies don't draw anything out, right? Rock is like breaks his windshield and is like, I'm gonna punch your teeth in, and then the next scene you see him, he's like reading through his file and he's like, you're actually a good guy. He's like, yeah, I am, but my brother's a fuck up, and like everything's good, right? Uh,
Honestly, that part is really weird to watch because I guess I had forgotten about it. Um,
because
just because like,
nothing else
well, no,
makes sense, right? Because like presumably Helen Mirren's some sort of like criminal like overlord or whatever. That's why like
mhm.
she's got the connections to like make any of this work, right? Like, sorry, didn't mean to interrupt you.
Yeah, because like it really feels like I don't know. This this is part of my problem with Hobbs in the movie, which is like the amount that he is not taking things seriously correlates to the amount that I'm not taking him seriously. And so it just like it really feels like they're just, oh well, we're setting up our spin-off. That's it. That's what's happening here. And that's fine, I guess. I don't super mind it. I am not a Hobbs and Shaw hater. Though there are those in like the universe, right? Who do think of themselves as Hobbs and Shaw kind of like haters, and like the Hobbs and Shaw did the right thing by kind of like quietly ushering these pieces that nobody likes out of the franchise. But yeah, I don't know. The thing that bothers me about Jason Statham and The Rock themselves is that they don't make up a very good, um, like buddy cop duo. Do you know what I mean? You know how like Danny Glover and like Mel Gibson and Lethal Weapon
Right.
are like a buddy cop duo. All right, please stop this. And part of what makes that work is that God, is his fucking name Murtaugh? One
Yeah,
of them.
Riggs and Murtaugh. Yeah,
Yeah. Is Riggs the black guy?
I don't remember which one's
I don't
which.
remember which is which, but Riggs and Murtaugh have very different sort of like vibes. One of them is, kind of like an old, tired family
Too old
man,
for
and
this
the other
shit.
one, yeah, exactly,
It's
and
the
the
young
other
gun.
one, yeah, is like the young gun, loose cannon, cop on the edge, right, like kind of thing. Um, but Hobbs and Shaw don't really have different energies. They're just kind of, I'm like really macho and aggressive with an American accent, and I'm really macho and aggressive with a Cockney accent.
Yeah,
Like that's the main thing that differentiates them.
I'm.
I honestly sort of wish Luke Evans was the Shaw in Hobbs and Shaw, because I think he would have a better back and forth with The Rock, just because The Rock is kind of a uh how do I want to put this? Like almost sort of like an everyman, even if he is like fucking Hercules or whatever. Whereas Luke Evans has this kind of like James Bond thing. And you can sort of see the appeal of, oh, this is like if Arnold Schwarzenegger in Commando teamed up with, James
Bond.
Bond.
Yeah, yeah.
That would make sense to me. But like Jason Statham and The Rock both have this frayed around the edges sort of appeal. So they're just giving the same sort of energy the whole time.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. Right, like you need like you need like a slightly better kind of like separation of the two concerns, right? Like, yeah, because Luke Evans, whatever, whichever Shaw that Shaw is more posh, whereas Deckard Shaw is very Cockney, which is like not the right pairing for Mr. The Rock. Like you could also do it with like the big guy being the proper guy. Like you could do like the quiet giant character, and that would work with like a Shaw type character, right? Like
Yeah. Or if Shaw leaned into being a criminal and uh Hobbs was like the law enforcement. Like I feel like you could do a thing of like lawful good, chaotic good, maybe.
yeah, yeah,
That would kind of like work out. One of them is kind of like bending the rules all the time. And the other is trying to play by the book. Like, yeah, I can understand how a paladin and a rogue, archetypally, right, could sort of be, opposed in that buddy cop way, but they're just sort of not in
yeah.
it. And I don't know. I feel like there's something a little lost in translation when it comes to the two of them, especially because of some stuff that I'm not going to spoil because it's in the Hobbs and Shaw movie and we're going to watch it.
Okay, just to put my stuff out there, I think Jason Statham is actually right for this movie, right? Like you were talking about, oh, like The Rock wants to be too goofy, like too much of a pro wrestler is the way I want to put it, right? I think Jason Statham I think he's actually would be a much better kind of like foil for Dom, right? Because like Dom's kind of like the upstanding one, and Shaw is kind of like the kind of underhanded one. And I think that would I think Shaw would be a great Lancer for Dom. Whereas I think
God,
I think Hobbs
that's
wants to be that.
actually really interesting.
Yeah, I think Hobbs wants to be that and isn't, right. Like he wants to be the main character too much, right? Like.
Yeah, I think, and the other thing that is like the elephant in the room is that there's no Brian in this movie. And I definitely really feel the lack of Brian here. They, in a weird way, try and replace him with Scott Eastwood as Little Nobody, who I hated. I don't know if other people hated him. I just found him so fucking annoying, and I was just like, who is this fucking goober that you are putting into the movies with the Mitsubishi exports, which is Brian's thing, right? Like those are the cars that Brian drives, right? And I can understand if you wanted to represent that archetype of driving, which is like handling, it's drifting, right? Being able to do like tight corners and all this other sort of stuff. But like the movies have never really been about that anyway. It's mostly just an aesthetic sort of thing. And Little Nobody is just so fucking annoying. He's like Scrappy Doo. He's like the Scrappy Doo of this.
Yeah,
Film, I guess.
I buy that. You know what? My hot take is they should have brought in is it Luke? They should have brought in the Drift King to replace Brian.
Oh, Sean from
Tokyo Drift.
From 3. Yeah, you could have convinced me. That would have been cool. Yeah. Especially because he has that accent. I like that he has the super West Texas accent. I bet that would play great.
And you could have Dom and Sean. You said his name was like Bond. Sean lost his Dom, who was Han, and Dom lost Brian. Right? Like it would have been perfect, buddy.
Yep. It would have been perfect. You're so right, honestly, and I'm honestly like a little mad about it. But yeah, so I think that there's some sort of cracks in the foundation to the family as it is sort of portrayed. There's definitely some flanderization, right? Like I said, Roman doesn't bother me as much in this one as he did in the last one, but it really just comes down to the cowardice thing, right? Like Roman being afraid. And like, I don't know. There's this dual characterization with Roman where he's simultaneously a show off, right? Which I like that part of Roman. And he's a scaredy cat, right? And I understand that those two things play off of one another because that's part of what makes it funny, right? Is that he talks a big game, but he's actually kind of a wuss, right? But it just really bothers me that he doesn't jump out of the plane. And then they reference it in this movie. I'm just like, oh God, come on, don't do this, you guys.
I like it less in this movie because it's grating, but like the thing that I liked about it in 7 is that like there's a reason they keep him around, right? Like his ostentatiousness is useful, right? Like,
yes,
and like
that's true at the party, right?
Yeah, and serves a role in the team, right? Here it's just kind of like I guess he can shoot good, which but never was referenced before and will never be referenced. I mean, I won't put my heart on, will never be referenced again, but like that kind of thing, right? Like, he has to have a badass moment and it's not in character, right? Like his badass moment in 7, I think was good for his, fit with who he was, right? Like, he's a coward, but he's shameless. And like in a situation where like he can just kind of like be a dickhead, it works. And I think that that's like good characterization. Like that's like kind of like a good way to like show why they keep him around, right? Like,
yeah, you know what? You've convinced me. I think I agree with you because that's so super true. It's also what I like about him in 5, right? Because in 5 he does that like fast talking thing at the evidence locker when they're trying to get in, and it's a small bit, right? But it's really full of character, and that's the thing that like is great about any of these ensemble movies, right? It's giving everybody sort of their moment to
he's the face
to like shine.
He's the face of the D&D party, essentially of the.
Oh my God! Yeah,
buddy, how much would you play a TTRPG? It's like a Fast and the Furious.
I was just thinking about that. What would I like roll? You know what's funny? Oh man, I can't super talk about this. Okay. I was having a conversation with a friend. We were talking about like racing games, right? We were talking about who we play in racing games, and I was talking about playing Bowser. I like to play Bowser because to me, because Bowser's thing is he has a super high top speed, but a pretty low acceleration and pretty bad handling, right? And typically the two things I like in racing games is one, really good handling, and two, weight, like power, right? And so playing Mario Kart where you're Bowser and you can just like bop into guys and you're super heavy is like a lot of fun or whatever. And I'm just sitting here thinking about like the character classes you could roll, right? What your stats would be, right? Like, oh man. You would have cars with different stats. I would have like torque and like horsepower, and you would have like feats and stuff that are like, oh, when you're driving, a car with this much horsepower, you can pop a wheelie, right? Or you can do a burnout, right? Like stuff like that.
Yeah,
That'd be fun.
it
That
would
would be
be.
fun.
You need a good way to kind of like make it work in kind of like like you could probably do a burnout, but like to what end, right? Like that's the kind of thing you need to like figure out. But I think it'd be fun. I'm sure somebody's done something like this. That's the name of the TTRPG, buddy. We'll have it ready by next year. It's gonna be called Race Wars, and we're gonna have to.
That's actually really funny. That's a really good one.
Um,
Yeah, the jump the shark thing is he wins the street race in Cuba with the flaming car is okay. So first of all, I do think that's dumb, especially because, and I have to mention this. Have you ever driven a manual transmission?
I have not.
Okay. For those of you at home, and also I guess maybe for Mango who might not understand, the thing about a transmission is that you have to shift up and down into different gears in order to access different levels of speed from your engine without blowing your RPM, essentially, right? And so the thing about first gear is I think big technically, or maybe it's small. First gear allows you to put a lot of RPM into not a lot of movement, right? Because what you need to get a car up to speed, right? So you need to pop it into first, and you're only in first for really like the first 5 miles an hour. Almost immediately you go into second gear, and then second gear you're kind of clear from like, let's say 10 miles an hour to like 30, right? Most of the time when I'm driving just surface streets, right, in a manual transmission, I'm doing that in second gear. And I'm also doing stuff in second gear that like, it's like the workhorse gear, right? And one of the things about gears that people don't get is that reverse is also a gear, and reverse has to be a gear that kind of does everything, right? First of all, it's really hard to drive in reverse. Most people can't drive very fast in reverse, which is why the thing of popping the e-brake and then slamming it into reverse and then going backwards in order to do the thing is so like cool and impressive. But the thing is that you can't actually put the car into gear because it would be like driving on the highway in first gear, right? You'd be doing insane amounts of RPM. You'd blow your engine in a heartbeat, basically, right? And I know that most people don't drive manual transmissions, right? And that I just happen to have to learn on one because my dad's car was a manual, right? And so I'm intimately aware of what the actual like process of engaging the clutch and popping into any of these individual gears feels like viscerally, and most people watching these movies just have no conception for that whatsoever. But anytime they do that thing where they pop the e-brake and they turn and they whip the car around and then put it into reverse and are driving the car backwards, it destroys me because it is so incredibly unrealistic, right? It is like the perfect sort of thing. It's the perfect sort of like Call of Duty thing where the way a gun behaves because of how we understand video games is so different from the way a gun behaves because of how we understand reality. And so I agree that moment is dumb and kind of jump the sharky, and it is because the way in which Dom wins in the end is by doing this reverse, switch thing.
So I could not find an answer, but I went and looked because I know that like Cuba is a famously communist country. like I know that the communist cars are all like wacky, right? Like I think it was like the East German car. Is it the East German or the Russian car? Didn't have a fuel gauge on it. And like they're all like made from cardboard because it's like you're working with whatever, right? Like
Yeah.
Cuba I know is a little bit special because it also tends to have a fair amount of like antique American cars. Um,
Yeah,
uh,
because they imported a bunch of cars
yeah,
before the embargo, but then weren't able to get. Which is why in that scene, most of those cars are very classic old
right,
cars from the 50s and 60s before the embargo went into place.
right. But I was just checking because I thought there's a chance that like some weird communist put like multiple reverse gears on a car, right? Like I could see that. Like there are things that are just like ridiculous in this kind of like designed by committee type way, right? Like it's a whole thing. But yes, no, I definitely get why you feel that way. That to me folds into kind of like whatever, I don't care, right? Like excuse me while I ban this what's it called, spammer in our chat. Yeah, but yeah, I'm definitely with you on that. I think it's not great.
I really do like the moment where Dom. There's two things that he does in that race that I think are sweet. The one where he just starts ripping the panels off of the car. That's just like iconic and cool. And the other one is the thing that he does with the soda can tab.
Oh, you mean the Coke ad? The ad for Coca-Cola?
Yeah. Oh, yes. The ad for Coca-Cola. The thing he does with the little tab from the can of Coke, which is to put, I think, is the vacuum line, right? To put the tab around the vacuum line, so you pull the thing out of the vacuum line. Which I don't think is real. I bet if I were to talk to a real mechanic, they would say, "This is fucking ridiculous. This doesn't make any sort of sense." But like in the way that he does it is like appropriately cool. Do you know what I mean? Like I immediately understood what he was doing. Oh, hey, there's this rubber nozzle that taps into something. I'm going to attach that to a thing so that I can rip that nozzle off when I need to. And that's the way that I'm going to win this street race on this busted ass car or whatever. It's like this is the kind of shit that I'm super here for when it comes to, like Fast and Furious stuff. Hitting Nas or whatever is like way less interesting to me than little shit like that I think is like cool and interesting. And it's, or like the thing that he mentions in 6, where he's talking about how the way Letty shifts into third or shifts from third to fourth or whatever, it's like that kind of stuff, right? It's functionally jargon, right? But it's the right kind of jargon that I like a lot.
Yeah. It's like Fonz kicking the soda machine and two bottles popping out, right? Like, it doesn't really work that way, but it's cool. And like it gives, it's probably actually more effective on people who don't know what it is, right? Because like you don't get it. Like this is also every hacker movie, right? Like it's like you say a thing,
sure, yeah.
And like your general audience gets kind of like the atmospherics and it works, but like anybody who knows what you're talking about is like a fuck you, right? Like like
yeah, absolutely. I mean that happens in this movie with the zombie cards, right? Like one of the things that bothered me even in 2018, I want to say when this movie came out, excuse me, was the way the zombie cars just like they are it's like they are acting as if there's an individual person driving each of them, but that can't possibly be real. But it's like there's nothing to bridge that gap in my mind in a way that I know it just wouldn't work. Like you'd have to write some kind of script or algorithm, I guess, to like define the way that they start acting and behaving, right? And like there's parts of it that I would understand. Maybe I'm activating cars in this parking lot and just saying reverse at full speed. Sure, I get that. You're making it rain, whatever. But some of the zombie cars are doing really complex maneuvers, and that's the thing that makes me go, that's not real.
Yeah, I wonder how much of that is like is like driverless cars being like a more real thing now than they were when this movie came out or when it was filmed, right? Like like I feel like the general public is a little bit more in tune with like what that looks like and how not far along we are for that, right? Like and so like when this is like less that, it feels less inauthentic, if that makes sense. But yeah, I'm totally with you on that. Um, but you know, at some point, it's a fucking Fast and Furious movie, right? I like Mr. Nobody, right? Like he steals the movie for me, like both times he's been there. Um, uh, you know, I like his little kind of like, you know, it's like it's kind of like I told you he'd get it by the third time, right? Like the kind of like the kind of like let's break the rookie in
Yeah.
type of deal, which I thought was super
I
fun.
don't actually remember if Scott Eastwood is in the next one or not. F9.
I mean, these movies have like astounding callbacks, right? Like Brian's partner showing up in like
Yeah, bro. His partner from 4 shows up in 6 in order to get him access to Braga to get the backstory for Shaw or whatever. Yeah, completely unreal
yeah,
stuff.
yeah. So I this movie, these movies are great at like keeping it in the family, as it were.
Even this one, when I'm sorry, Ian Shaw, I think is his name. The brother shows up. I was like, Luke Evans is who I was thinking is the
Yeah,
actor. I remember being like, oh my God, because in 7, you see that he's really like fucked up. And I remember thinking at the time, oh, he's gonna come back, right? Like that's what that means, right? We are showing him alive, so that we can kind of see him come back. And it's really just a cameo. He doesn't really do much. Obviously, most of this whole bit is kind of owned by Jason Statham. But yeah, I also like the callback to their confrontation in 7 when he does like the fake out with shooting him by saying, "You thought this was a street fight?" Just bam, bam, right? Satisfying, even if it is like all part of a thing. And then like Santos and the other guy show up, which is also cute.
yeah. No, I kind of wish that like that moment like lost all kind of like impact for me, because like, oh, he's not dead. He's got a whole spinoff, right? Like, um, so those things kind of like it's a shame that I'm not that I'm not kind of watching these as they come out, but I am excited to watch the rest of them. Like like we said, serviceable movie.
Okay,
Yeah,
so F9. Have you seen the F9 trailer? I feel like F9 is close enough that you probably have seen and maybe remembered some stuff
I
from
mean,
it.
if I remember the F8 one right, like is this the one with John
True.
Cena?
This is the one with John Cena. Do you know who John Cena is playing? It's in the trailer, but
Um, is it I initially I thought it was he's somebody's brother. Is he Dom's brother?
he's Dom's brother. He's Dom's evil brother. This is the thing that actually is, I think, my underlying thesis about the entire Fast and Furious film franchise, right? Is that each of the movies are fundamentally about like action movie cliches and like not cliches the wrong word, like stereotypes, right? So for instance, 5 is the ensemble. It's putting the group together, right? It's the Samurai 7 thing, right?
It's the
6
Avengers.
is yeah. 6 is the evil doppelgangers, right? Which is like a thing that will be in, like old whatever of these movies, right? Where everyone has their like kind of evil opposite that they need to like square off against. 7 is the villain has a brother who's out for revenge, right? 8 is one of the team goes evil, right? Like, and then 9 is one of the team has an evil relative who's working for the bad guy, right? Like, all of these modern era, to be fair, or actually 4 also has this, which is um like the member of the team drops dead mysteriously, right? All of these movies kind of have this like core pitch that feels like at the heart of movie storytelling to me in a way. And so F9 having that pitch of John Cena is Dom's evil brother is just so good, and I
I
love every second of
I
it.
feel like that's also like directly throwing shade at The Rock, right? It's like, well, we'll take the new WWE movie star because you're a dickhead, Dwayne. Um, because like I feel like they're like John Cena's the second kind of big. Him and I guess Batista, right? Like are like the new WWE crossover people.
Yeah.
But Dwayne was the first. Mr. The Rock was the first. Um, uh, is Cypher? I remember is Cypher the villain in this one or in Hobbs and Shaw?
Cypher comes back.
I feel like she was in the trailer. I feel like she was in the trailer for one of these two movies. I was like, I don't recognize her, but like in my mind, it's like it's got to be.
Oh yeah. So okay, she is in this movie, though. Well, I won't spoil anything.
Okay.
She's in this movie, and is funny and interesting. What was I going to say though? Hobbs and Shaw, the villain Hobbs and Shaw is completely like unrelated to any of this stuff.
Is that the one where like they go to like Hawaii, Hawaii, I guess it is, or like some other
American Samoa?
Oh, American. That makes sense. The Rocks. Yeah, the Rocks family. Yeah, okay. I can see that.
Which includes another wrestler, Roman Reigns, I guess.
Oh,
who I don't know if he's related to The Rock. I think he's also American Samoan, but he shows up in that movie. Are we gonna do Hobbs and Shaw before we do F9? I guess chronologically.
Yeah, I think we should. I think we're supposed to, right? Like, you know, famously, Tyrese Gibbons or whatever his name is got like mad at The Rock for like pushing the release of F9, so Hobbs and Shaw could come out. Like, I don't know.
Oh yeah.
You know how much of this was anybody's fault, but like, you know, I know, when I was reading up on the beef between Vin Diesel and The Rock, one of the things that came up was like Tyrese Gibbons, like on Instagram, was like, "You're taking food out of my children's mouth," to The Rock, because you know Fast 9 got bumped for Hobbs and Shaw.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm still rooting for Giselle to come back at some point because we didn't see her die.
True.
So that's I don't know if I have any strong predictions other than that. Other than if it's Justin Lin, I expect it to be better. Justin Lin isn't directing the X, right?
He was set to direct X, and after 10 days of filming, he left the project and was replaced by Luis Lederer, who is the Triple X guy.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure. Oh no, I'm sorry. He is the Transporter guy.
Okay.
The
Transporter, Jason Statham.
Yeah, and then also, wow, he also made Now You See Me. Do you know that movie? Movie is wild.
I don't think so. Yeah.
Now You See Me is a movie about magicians like doing a heist.
Oh, is this the one where they like might be wizards? Is this
yeah.
Yeah.
So, there is a YouTube video, or
Leo Vader has a YouTube video about like, are they actually wizards? Right?
Yeah. I actually, to be fair, I've seen both Now You See Me movies. I think they're dumb as fuck, but I actually think they're very watchable and fun because they kind of have this premise of what if different kinds of magicians were superheroes? Like one of them is an escape artist. One of them is sleight of hand. He's like a pickpocket who does like close-up magic, sleight of hand tricks. One of them is like a psychic guy who will like guess the thing in your mind or whatever. And I just think that like making like a heist team out of that is like just such a good pitch that even though the movie is sort of dumb as hell, I love every second of it. It is not a movie that I like have returned to maybe ever, honestly, but maybe I've returned to it like more than once. But
is here to issue a correction. It's a mentalist, not a psychic.
Okay.
But you know, like sounds like the perfect guy to direct a Fast and like this feels like, you know, like what if cars but superheroes? What if magicians but superheroes? Feels like it's got like a lot of crossover. You know, like it's
especially now that you know we're adding Jason Statham and Brie Larson to the cast. Are like the two big additions in Fast 10. Fast X.
Wait, but Jason Statham's been in the movie.
Oh, I'm sorry, Jason Momoa.
Oh, okay. Oh,
is,
right.
Who joins on this one?
Okay. Yeah. And it's supposedly the last one. Like the Wikipedia page has scrubbed all references to to Hobbs and Shaw 2 and to the female-led film, female-led spinoff, which was the only thing it was known by. So I guess we won't. I guess this is it.
We'll see.
Yeah. Yeah. But with that, I'm going to say, besides surviving, besides COVID and Paxlovid, how was your week?
Well, we haven't done a cast in a while, so we
Yeah,
did
2
PAX, I
weeks.
guess, is the
Yeah,
big
that's a big
one.
one. Yeah.
Obviously PAX is less big for me because I barely saw anything. I was just basically working my booth the whole time. I spent a little time at the Brace Yourself booth, because we had some friends who developed a game and I played their game there. But the
Super Raft Boat Together. Check it out.
yeah, super raft boat together. Which is, oh, have you played it?
I haven't. I haven't had the opportunity because the
It
line was too
is
long. Brace yourself, honestly.
actually kind of nuts, to be honest with you, and I am sort of super interested in it, just because it's a twin stick shooter. So like Relic Hunter Zero is this, um, but it is roguelike, and so what essentially happens is you you're building your raft, and stuff is coming and it's destroying your raft, right? So you're trying to make your raft bigger. It's like crushing your raft. So you have to like shoot that stuff, whether it's like sharks or like rocks or kind of like whatever else. But there's a bunch of characters and a bunch of like roguelike things that'll give you power-ups and accessories and guns and all this other sort of stuff, which is actually like pretty cool and pretty fun, and I had a pretty good time with it. So that was like the game that I checked out, and actually like played sort of the demo for. There's a bunch of other games that were there that are like by people I know, and other sorts of things, but I don't know, that was the one that I wanted to, I guess, shout out and talk about.
So I got a game that I want to shout out that I had a great time with at
Oh,
PAX.
yeah.
And this is Estrella. Buddy has been selling this game on this show for a while, and I think you undersold it. No,
I'm glad that you get it. When I
Yeah.
said I wanted to have a cast on this game in particular, I was like, man, I don't like even know if Mango is gonna connect on the level that I connected with Estrella on, right? But God, yeah,
it's good.
yep.
It's great. I like I played all of the games at your booth. I played I did a demo of Rain World. I did the VR behind the painting VR.
Excuse me.
Uh, buddy, I will make the same complaint to you that I make about every game that lacks these options. Not being able to hold the paintbrush in my left hand in behind the frame VR bothered me. But that's I've already beaten behind the frame, so I will not complain too hard about it.
Well, you're inhabiting a character, Mango, and that character is right-handed, so I'm sorry,
You know what? They switched the fucking sword hand for Link in the Wii U
Really?
Twilight Princess. Yeah, so Link is canonically left-handed, but they actually I think it was Twilight Princess came out on both, let's say GameCube and Wii. And on the GameCube version, he's left-handed because you're controlling with the normal controller. But they literally mirrored the entire game. They just like you okay? Did Orion get you?
Sorry, Orion just reached up and scratched me a little.
Okay, but they literally mirrored the entire game of Twilight Princess for the Wii, because that was easier than switching the hands on it or whatever.
Fair enough. Yeah.
And then I played. What was the skeleton one that you guys announced? It's not a skeleton, but it's like the cult leader with the
Oh, Universe for Sale.
Universe for Sale, which I am intrigued by.
The moment you said that the skeleton cultist protagonist or whatever like connected with you, I was like, oh yeah, that makes so much sense. Like, I get it.
I mean, it's super interesting, right? Like there is a lot of implied world building that is just like candy. It's like bait for me. It's like,
Yeah. Like because you're on a space station in, I think, Jupiter.
Yeah.
Right. And there's like acid rain and all this other sort of stuff. Wild.
And everything's implied. Nothing's very little is like told to you directly, which is like, oh yeah, that's the stuff right into my veins, right? And then I played Zoetti and Estrella. Zoetti is neat. I'll put some time into Zoetti. I do not like it as much as Estrella, which I just told you at the show. Good that Zoetti's coming out in a month, because I would have skipped it for Estrella if it wasn't. But it's that I am so pumped for Estrella. It's on my head.
Can we talk about what is it specifically about Estrella that you found to be so like addictive, right? Like what is the secret sauce here?
Okay, so just trying to get it right. It's like there's this level of chance with each hand, right? Like that's the kind of like the kind of draw of like trading card games, which is like these
Yep.
this particular genre. Oh, hello,
I'm
Orion.
so sorry. Oh my god.
So it's okay.
He is going real hard on my microphone stand right now.
But he's sorry. But like there's like all of these kind of like trading card game based roguelites, right? Are like the kind of like draw there is kind of is the randomness and like, you know, kind of like same thing as like any normal trading card game. It's like you're looking for the pieces for the thing that you want to do, and you kind of do it. And this has that, but like doubled, right? Like, because the other aspect of this is you have to roll these dice. And when you roll the dice,
did you get a big purr?
I did
right
get
there?
a big purr right there. When you roll the dice, there's this other chance element, and this is to your, you know, what you talk about is like, oh, there's, you know, you roll the dice, and like if you take the risky dice, only 2 of those like 6 faces are good. There's also reroll mechanics, and also like, you know, the it's not quite exactly damage and healing. It's purification and corruption, which are kind of like the same resource, but like at odds with each other, right? Like the enemies are trying to corrupt you, and you're trying to purify the enemies, but you can apply the other resources in other ways, right? Like if you don't want to take the corruption, you can corrupt the enemies, which has negative consequences. And if you don't want to, and if you want to heal yourself, you use purify on yourself. And I think that's all like I think the systems all interweave like super well together, right?
Yeah.
Which
no, the interaction between safe, balanced, and risky, I think, is maybe the like maybe that's what I would say is the secret sauce, because you have to take a certain amount of risk. You can't beat runs unless, I mean, Australia is really hard. I have actually technically only beaten the game once, and I have put, let's look, not counting any hours that I put in like development builds that were not on Steam, I have 157 hours on Steam in Australia right now, right? And part of that is that you need gas, right? You need power in order to actually win the game, which is a really, like, this was the thing I didn't get for a long time about Australia. I was like, if I'm picking safe dice, I feel like I should be okay, right? If I just pick all safe dice. But the answer is no, because you're just left with a bunch of purify ones like half the time, right? And it's like you're not doing the thing to advance your game plan faster than the enemy is advancing his game plan of killing you, right? And so you end up in these situations where you just don't have enough power. You don't have enough, your engine is not strong enough, okay, to kind of like overcome enemies later in the game. And once I realized that, I was like, oh, this is incredible. This is fucking with me, because you need to accept a certain amount of risk. You need to take a certain amount of balanced die, which are going to be more powerful, a certain amount of risky dice, which are going to be the most powerful, right? But you can't do the thing where you take only risky dice, because you will just end up with a fistful of corruption at some point, and you just have to kill yourself, right? There's no other option but to fucking die. You know, that's really interesting to me, with the way that Australia like kind of allows you to create these builds. And obviously Australia has a bunch of characters. You'd have only played Solarius and Mooney, and even then you would have only played a certain percentage of them, because there's certain stuff that is disabled in the demo, right? Like there are progression systems for kind of more advanced mechanics building on one another. Mooney has a build that I won a game on stream with, actually, which was it's called a hex build, where you're putting a bunch of hex dice into your um dice pool, and then you can do stuff by getting rid of your own hex dice, right? You can just axe your own hex dice in order to like have powerful effects, right? And that's a build you just wouldn't be able to get that in the demo, because I just don't think that the star blessings, the die faces, like the types of dice are unlocked yet. And all of that stuff I think is like really neat and interesting.
I could imagine. I also never played Mooney. The Tide Hammer, Solarius Tide Hammer is just like too much my aesthetic to like pass up. Like if you had gotten to me when I sat down at the table and had told me to play Mooney to do the tutorial, I would have done Mooney, but I was just like, it's a hammerhead shark, and he hits things with like hammery stuff, and he got waves. And I'm like, this is everything I want out of this game. So
Did you find Wave to be a very powerful build on Solarius?
I liked Wave a lot. I feel like, what was it? I played enough games that's like one of those things where like I could tell like, oh, I am like borderline on this run, right? Like I managed to, I think, beat all of the runs I went on, but like I could tell that like some of those like I did not pull the right dice to like make this run last past this stage. Like I will fail in the next level because I just don't have the stuff to like make it. Because like I didn't get enough wave die. Like I took the blessings I took. I go for the risky blessings because like they're the fun ones, right? Like
oh yeah, the black hole blessings.
Yeah. I did not do enough to kind of like interact. Like I did not draw the dice that like interweave well with it. Like I just didn't get enough good dice, and this would be a short run, but that's fine, right? Like that's like the genre, right? Is like you occasionally like miss the run. But it's just really, really well done. You saw me discover some mechanics, like wave keeps you from killing yourself.
Yeah, that was a really interesting interaction, to be honest with you. Because I have been fucked by, like, one of the things is funny, in Zoetti you can do this. In Zoetti there are certain mechanics that will put like dots on you, but dots don't trigger on like battle end. So for instance, there's the way bleeds work in Zoetti is they're called gash. And every time you attack when you have gash on you, you double your gash stacks, right? So if you start with 3, you'll go to 6, you'll go to 12, you'll go to 24, right? And something that I'll do sometimes is I will have gash on me, but I'll kill the opponent and win the battle, right? And those gash checks never go off. So even if you have 250 gash, right, and it would just one shot you, even no matter how much defense you could possibly stack, right? That stuff won't trigger. But Estrella, it does not work that way. When an enemy is defeated in Estrella, when a battle ends, all of those things are processed procedurally, right? So for instance, be a good example of this. If I have 1 health left and I attack an enemy with a death bomb, that bomb goes off, right? I attack a guy, he explodes for 1 damage, and I take that 1 damage. I'm losing that heart no matter what, even though killing that guy sort of like ended the battle, right? And some of that stuff I think is kind of interesting and sort of like neat, because that's exactly what wave is the opposite.
Yeah,
Wave
it's
is
a heal bomb. It's a purify bomb.
Yeah, exactly. Wave used to be insanely good. If you see, a lot of those wave dice have these conditionals on them that reduce the number of wave stacks. Those are because of me, because I told Leo, I was like, wave is too good. If you get a good wave build going, this game is free, basically. Because you just never, like, you stack wave so high that it becomes sort of trivial to like
because you just have to kill 1 enemy and then it wipes the board. And if you get the artifact that triggers it on like meat value, then you don't even have to get that far with it, right? Like
and the thing I recommended to Leo, I said you should have because there are these dice that trigger off of wave, right? Like there's one where do a couple of purify, but if the enemy has a certain threshold of wave, you like if they have 4 wave or more or something like that, you draw a die, right? I was like, you should have this stuff cost you wave, so it's sort of like a resource. You are building wave on an enemy, but you can also sort of spend the wave on your enemy to do neat stuff if you want. And that's sort of what we have today in the game now, right? So
very cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm excited for that game to come out. It's a very cool game. Otherwise, at PAX, didn't see a ton of stuff that like really drove me crazy. I was mostly there for people rather than for the show part. It also felt like there wasn't a ton of like, I didn't feel like standing in line for hours. It also felt like there wasn't a lot to like stand in line for. I got hands on the Street Fighter 6 demo, but like that's not like a special thing for PAX. So, that was fun. I went to a couple of panels and I didn't think they were particularly good. But I'm not gonna name them just because I don't want to throw shit on anything. I just didn't particularly enjoy them. Commander was super fun. We played a bunch of Commander.
We did. I think I was almost undefeated except for that one game that you
With the Gyro Straits.
you
Yeah.
played.
With the
Yeah.
Gyro Straits. Yeah. Yeah.
Honestly, I think even if I got fucked in that game because I kept a ring with 2 lands and Soul Ring. I was like, this is fine, right? Turn 1 Soul Ring, easy kind of thing. And then somebody fucking destroyed my Soul Ring. I think Josh counterspelled my Soul Ring, and I was like, oh well, I guess I lose.
It seems like Josh's only thing that he does in these games is like just like fuck someone for no reason, right? Like he fucked me in the fucking pre-con the game that we played, the 5-star game. Yeah.
Oh, I love that game. Was so fun. I loved that game. I love the star. The star format is one of the most elegant formats I think to making Magic fun, in my opinion. Star format for folks at home is the rules are you have 5 people, right? And if you think about 5 people, you have 4 relationships. You have the relationships with the 2 people adjacent to you, and the relationship with the 2 people who are across from you, essentially, right? And if you draw that out, that draws a star, right? And the rule is when the 2 people across from you lose the game, you win the game, right? So you are simultaneously sort of allied with the 2 people on either side of you, but also like your enemy is the person across the way from you. Your enemy is the person across the way from you. And that interaction is different for every seat at the table because every seat at the table is going to have a different configuration of who they're allied with and who they're kind of against. So Mango and I were enemies, right? But we had different sort of allies. Because
we both shared Ray as an ally, and then
No, we both shared Josh as an ally. Oh, wait. We both shared Josh.
You're right. Yeah.
And Sarian was my ally. He was an enemy of yours, right?
Right.
Yeah. It was a really interesting game. There's a lot of politics involved. I ended up having to destroy one of Sarian's creatures because Sarian was about to win the game, and even though he was my ally, I had to sabotage him, right, in order to have him not kill Josh before I could kill Ray. And so, yeah, what ended up happening was I sabotaged Sarian a little bit. Josh ended up killing Sarian, and then it was me and Josh versus Ray. And I got the killing blow with an exact lethal on just like a really interesting, like incredibly. This is one of the things that is like fun about Magic, creating these like Rube Goldberg machines. Because I casted an X spell from my graveyard, and then I copied it with my commander, and it was like X is equal to 6. And then I copied it with my commander, and then I made another copy, but the copy was targeting something else, and then I swiped the copy or I changed the target of the copy so that all 3 were targeting Ray. And it's just like that kind of complication, to like win a game with an exact lethal was really neat. We did. Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah. Commander's a good format, especially if you're playing with friends.
Yeah.
Yeah. What else happened this week? Played a lot of Marvel Snap. Managed to hit platinum this morning, actually.
Nice.
It kind of like the set of things that I had this set of revelations this morning in one of our group chats. But like essentially, the thing that I learned is that like when I learned a couple of specific common pieces, but it's like, oh, the meta kind of favors surprise builds because surprise builds means that on like the last turn you can like win and also like bait your opponent into like snapping, or like like you can like get like a big swing of ranks, right? Because if you're obviously winning and you snap, your opponent might just run away, right? Like, and that happens enough, like because like that's the game, right? The game is very like poker in that the game isn't winning any particular number of hands. It's knowing when to hold them and knowing when to fold them and knowing when to like push your bets, right? Like. And so like the way you evaluate a Marvel Snap deck is not necessarily its win rate, it's its expected value. And like the expected value is based on how well you can pilot it and know when to bail out before you end up spending too many points before you get like a big win. So that's my that's kind of been my interesting set of thinking about Marvel Snap. It's fun, but it's like it just works differently than I initially thought it did. Like you don't want to just like win every game. You want to like win in such a way that you can like trick people into like giving you more of their points.
Yeah. A friend of mine described Marvel Snap that way to me, and I think it makes a lot of sense. that the fundamentals of the game are about you know these betting mechanics essentially.
Yeah, that makes sense. What else? Uh, I don't know. Oh, this is the thing I've been meaning to bring up for weeks now. Did you ever do the quest line for the Explorers League or the Dragon Scale
No,
Expedition?
I said I was going to, but I didn't because I've one of the weird things about COVID is that it has been hard for me to like play WoW. I've just had a hard time getting kind of my like WoW brain to work right.
I feel that.
So yes, I did not actually do that Explorers League quest, even though I
Uh,
had meant to.
Dragon Scale Expedition is I believe, the proper
Dragon
name.
Scale Expedition, yeah, is actually what I'm
Um,
thinking. Sorry.
well, I'll give you the opportunity to do it this week, but I want to pitch my prediction before we get out of
Okay,
patch
sure.
point,
Have you
point
done
7.
have you done any of the other Forbidden Reach stuff?
Yeah, so I've been fooling around with it. I did a bunch of keys and like the key like I was like having a neat time with it, but I have also at this point I have gotten the 3 stones that I need for my ring. Like the 3 specific ones that like, are the right ones to get. And so I mean it's kind of quickly falling back out again, right? It's like there's not like, there's some stuff for me to get in there and that's fun, but like it's not like I spent on Saturday, I spent a couple hours like in a group hunting rares and getting some keys, but like I do not feel compelled to get enough keys to totally finish the particular vault, which I think is probably good because I won't burn out on it. But on the other hand, it means that like it's just like not that it's not so compelling that I feel like I need to like clear every room.
I get that absolutely, especially because for me it's that the new patch is coming so soon.
Yeah.
Like the new patch is like right around the corner basically, and it makes it hard for me to care about the Forbidden Reach because I'm like, wait, hold on, we're gonna get a new zone like immediately, so I don't know.
Yeah. Um, but I've been just like doing several things. Like I've been doing some of these like weekly reset quests that like aren't exactly visible, right? Like I did the one with the guy who's like very like the orc who's like very ashamed of the fact that he like was like a dragon slaver in the old world, and he I no spoilers here, but something happens. There's a storyline there. I've also been doing Tarzan's Tales, where like it's like you find a blind Desjardins who's like sitting on a volcano, being like, "You are not worthy. Go kill a bunch of dragons, and I'll tell you a story." And that's been fun, but weirdly, I'm kind of like getting to the end of my profession trees. Like, there's nothing big left that I want to get. Like, I'm filling out like the last tree of mining, and it'll take me a while, but I don't really care. Um, I am filling out like I haven't even started the bomb tree of engineering, but I also don't really care that much. Um, so it feels like I'm kind of getting towards the end of that, which I guess makes sense, right? Like you don't want your whole expansion to be like locked behind, you don't want somebody who comes and like halfway through the expansion not be able to catch up ever, but it feels like, oh well. It was also weird. Like I've been finished with all 4 factions for like weeks now, um, and like people that I like perceive as like playing a lot more than me have not been, and it's just kind of like I didn't think I was playing all that much, right? Like, uh,
Um, I am not done with all 4 factions. I'm not done with the Tuskar actually, funnily enough.
okay,
But I'm done with all of the others. And I've mostly just been I don't know. I like doing like I like doing world content, and so I'm always sort of drawn to some pieces of that. But I don't know. This is sort of why I feel like the Forbidden Reach will probably be for me if I do figure my shit out, because I quite like running around and clearing rares, right? Like that is world content that I'm here for. I want to get in a big group. I want to just fly from place to place, fight these guys, have them drop a thing that I think is like, useful, whatever the currency is, kind of thing. This is like why I got really into Zareth Mortis, basically. Um, I'm less into the timed events that are in uh sort of the base version of Dragonflight, right? So like the Siege on Dragonbane Keep,
okay,
or maybe
the
like
feast.
the feast, yeah. Because one of the things is like when I when I want to play an alt, I want to just be able to hop onto that alt and like do the thing, right? But like with the Siege of Dragonbane Keep, you can do that once per character per, like activation, then you have to wait 2 hours for the next one, and it's just like, ugh, I don't want to do that.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Otherwise, I don't know if we got a ton to talk about. I've been working, it's always a thing.
Okay, so the other thing that I've been doing, but I also sort of want to do, I'm gonna just pitch this a little bit, and we can figure our shit out a little bit later. I've been reading a lot of Order of the Stick, so I downloaded Order of the Stick specifically for reading on the plane, coming back from coming back from PAX. I was like, oh, this is like the perfect opportunity, and I've decided to do a very full read of the webcomic of Order of the Stick, right? For those of you who don't know, Order of the Stick is a webcomic that started, I want to say in like 2003. I want to say it's been 20 years of this webcomic. That is, just kind of like a generic D&D party in a sort of like a relatively generic world. But it's a comedy comic where there's a certain level of fourth, wall breaks. But there's also a lot of like real character drama and like development and like growth and stuff like that. And I think Order of the Stick is phenomenal. My memories, and I don't remember the last time I caught up with the comic. Definitely it's been years. It's probably been like 4 years at this point. My memories of the comic are insanely positive. There are some moments in this comic that I wish I could tell stories, right, that executed on plot twists or reveals or, character moments, right, that I just think of as the most insane or like heinous. Like, so for instance, this is a like a mild spoiler, but I just want to ask you, do you know who Right Eye is? Have you read the prequel comics?
I have not.
Okay. Oh,
tell me,
man.
Spoil me.
Okay, sure. I will spoil. In the prequel comics, you learn about Red Cloak and Zycon, right? The original. So Zycon is obviously the Lich. Red Cloak is his goblin cleric. Red Cloak is the bearer of the Crimson Mantle, which gives this connection. He's the high priest of the Dark One, this goblin god. They're the villains trying to do the villain things, right? The reason Red Cloak is named Red Cloak is when they first meet Zycon. Zycon, somebody introduces himself to Zycon, and it's like funny. It's like a bit, and he has a really long, complicated name, and Zycon just kills him because he's evil, right?
Yeah.
This is before he's a lich. Actually, he's still a sorcerer at the time. He blasts him with a lightning bolt or whatever. And then Zycon is like, okay, well, what are your names? And Red Cloak says, oh, my name is Red Cloak. And then his brother, who is a goblin with an eye patch, his name is Right Eye, right? There is a moment about 500 or maybe like 600 strips in. There's a moment where Zycon is super pissed and he gouges. I think Red Cloak gets shot in his eye by an arrow, right? And there's this moment where Zycon is so angry because he realizes that he has been duped and he has been kind of and that Red Cloak has kind of been playing him because Red Cloak wants to create this sort of goblin city metropolis, and all Zycon cares about is executing on their like evil plan. And there's just this moment where Zycon like holds Red Cloak to the ground and he says, you're not allowed to regenerate that eye. That's your personal idiot tax. And he calls him Wrong Eye, right? As opposed to Right Eye. And I remember my mind fucking blowing at that moment because it's just like, it is such a pointed and mean. Okay, by the way, the story of Right Eye is Red Cloak's brother. And he leaves. He says Zycon is a piece of shit. Fuck you, fuck this. he goes off and he starts like a goblin family, and he's doing all this other sort of stuff. And then Zycon comes to their village, and he forcibly sort of like recruits them. And there's this part where Zycon is dueling a super powerful archmage, Dorukon, actually, who, if you would like, they're about to go into the dungeon from the very beginning of the strip. That's like Dorukon's dungeon or whatever. And Right Eye is about to fly up and sneak attack Zycon while he's not looking, in order to kill him, because he's so mad about his whole family being kind of like conscripted into this army or whatever. And Red Cloak is so committed to the plan, right, that they have going, and his god and everything else, that he disintegrates his own brother, right? He kills his own brother, basically, in order to save Zycon, so that Zycon won't die, and that the plan is not, for nothing or whatever. And it's just like stuff like that is the stuff that makes Order of the Stick so fucking insane, right? And I don't know, I love this webcomic so much. Is this like a what are your thoughts, I guess?
Yeah, so it's been a while since I've gone back and read through everything. I probably should, because I have lost details along the way. But the moment that stands out to me is Familicide, which is when Vesuvius gets so mad that he ends an entire line of dragons. That has consequences later on, right? It's pretty great. But to your point, it's fun. I think it's gotten less fourth wall breaky as it's gone on, because it's more concerned with the plot than it is with making D&D jokes, which is fine. But no, that's just
also the D&D has sort of changed out from under it. This is the crazy thing. Reading all of these jokes about spot and listen checks, grapple checks, and I'm sitting here we're just in a completely different era of D&D at this point.
Yeah. Although there is a great joke. My other favorite, maybe the most memorable, maybe not my favorite joke, is they go to fight a witch, and there's a joke about witches' hexes, and then the map turns into a hex map instead of being a square map.
A hex grid, yeah.
And
then Vesuvius is mad when it switches back, because he's like, this is clearly more efficient.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's a great comic, and I would recommend it to everybody who likes that kind of stuff out here. Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. I've been reading Order of the Stick for years. I also like Full Frontal Nerdity, which is another.
I don't know that one.
So it's not as storyline heavy, although they have storylines. Essentially, the pitch is it's this gaming group that's been together forever. It's the GM and two dudes, and then the third dude is a webcam, because he moved to Alaska at the start of the strip. And it's just stories about their games. The guys are all kind of they're always breaking the game and being obnoxious power gamers, and it's fun. Their current arc's pretty good. It's a long running arc about a particular game they're in and the story contained therein. So
Have you ever read the one that is the Star Wars prequels, but the characters are as if it was a role playing game?
I feel like I read part of it, but I don't think I don't know if I ever finished it.
Okay, yeah.
One of my all-time favorites was Order of this, or not Order of this, 8-Bit Theater, which was the story of Final Fantasy 1, but told with comic panels. And they did a Kickstarter for it, and he's like, look, it's just going to be the transcripts, because I cannot print these characters and not be sued into hell by Square Enix. But yeah, no, that was a big part of my childhood was 8-Bit Theater.
Yeah, I remember I read a lot of 8-Bit Theater, but I don't think I ever finished it. Because 8-Bit Theater has Black Mage.
Yes.
And he's just a bunch of jokes. And then Red Mage shows up and he's really jealous.
And he's got a healing shiv.
Or yeah.
Shiv. Maybe it's one of the
And then
psychers.
there's the bad guy. I forgot. I loved the bad guy in it. I never finished it though, because it's over by now, right?
Yeah, it's been over for.
Yeah, I think it ended when we were
in college, I think. Or
yeah, so, this is what I think actually maybe is when I first got serious about it, because I remember reading it in high school, but I really tried to read all of it, and I just kind of couldn't get all the way through it in college, because I'm pretty sure it ended in college somewhere.
Yeah, no, it's been gone for a long time, but every once in a while I should go back and read that. But yeah, have a long list of. I have dropped a lot of like I used to read all of questionable content, but like that got dropped 10 years ago. It is weird. The
I
number.
remember you had like 70 or something webcomics every week that you kept up with.
Yeah. It's less than that now just because I haven't added as many. But like Saturday morning breakfast cereal still updates.
Yeah.
Control Alt Delete still updates. Uh, uh,
Loss.
yeah.
We should get 2 more people on the podcast. One of them lying down.
Oh man, do I have any other big ones? Yeah, nothing crazy. Perry Bible Fellowship died and came back. Funnily enough, I started reading Awkward Zombie when I was in high school, and she's like the artist and author is our age. One of my high school friends went to college with her at Stevens Institute of Technology in New Jersey, and met her, and like told me he's like, I met the person, and I've just been like following the comics still, right? Like she's married now to a guy who like shows up occasionally in the comics. It's like it's weird because like Basic Instructions is a comic that is like a dude. It's like a dude in Portland, Oregon, who's like vaguely nerdy, and he did these comic styles, like pictures, like that's drawn over. He did the comic for a number of years, right? Then he's like, I need to stop, and he just replayed the entire comic from start to finish. And when it ended, he started it up again and just started doing new comics. So, I've been following these for way too long. I have a folder that's like comics that are now dead because I've been like reading them for so long. I had my own webcomic for a little while called Oswald the Volcano. It was terrible.
I had a comic. I had a strip in the what the fuck was it called? The newsletter, in the Hopkins newsletter. Before I had my column, I had a strip because they did. I don't know. They were just like they were looking for somebody to do a comic strip, and I was like, sure, yeah, I'll fucking do it. And I probably did like 5 or 6, and then I eventually started writing a column because they asked me to write a column, and I was like, okay. Rachel in the chat says, I wish I had known you liked Oots before now, buddy. I spent years stopping myself from making I prepared explosive runes this morning jokes. Can I just under what circumstances could a real person make that joke?
I think it's a poop joke.
Well, like you can't prepare explosive runes.
If you have a big morning shit, that's like I feel like that's like the basis of it, right? It's like
Okay.
You have a big gnarly shit.
Really?
I mean, I don't know if this is what Arahe meant, but what immediately popped into my mind.
The thing, okay, so I prepared explosive rune this morning is a joke based on you have to write something with the explosive runes spell, and the kind of thing that people in D&D groups write is stuff like that, right?
Right.
And that's what makes it funny. But like, how would that apply to like the real world? Outside of maybe, like writing a note and like putting it on my computer or something. It's like I could have seen this. Put like a post-it on your computer. It's like, hey, do this thing for me, and then under that, I prepared explosive runes this morning. That would be pretty funny. That'd be.
I get what you're saying there. Again, my immediate reaction was like big noisy shit comes out of the bathroom. I prepared explosive runes this morning.
That's how I'm gonna ask Rachel if she's shitting. I'm gonna be like, hey, are you preparing explosive runes in there?
All right. Well, we're over time.
Yeah.
All right. That was the Fast and Furious. If you have if you'd like to write into us about Explosive Runes or the Fast and the Furious franchise, you can reach us at submersible@gmail.com or podcast@submersible.games.com. You can follow us at twitch.tv/submersible.games or youtube.com/@submersible.games, where these go out live, usually Mondays at 7, depending on how sick any of us are. That's everything I have. Buddy, you have anything you're looking to promote?
Do I have anything looking to promote? I am playing Zodi on stream this Friday. And I will say, excuse me, God. I'm playing Zodi on stream this Friday, and I am showing new stuff that hasn't been shown for the game. So if you played that demo and you wanna get a little sneak peek at something a little different for Zoetti, I would tune the fuck in, as they say.
When is when is the release date for Zoetti?
The release date for Zoetti is 420.
Really?
Plays it. April is literally April 20th. Yeah. As a matter of happenstance, right? Obviously, Sony has nothing to do with like weed or whatever. But it's just we like to release on Thursdays, and it happened to fall on the third Thursday in April, and that Thursday is April 20th. So yeah, that is when Sony is releasing. I'm gonna be doing streams for the next 3 weeks on Zoetti. So this stream is I'm showing off some new stuff. Next week's stream showing off more new stuff. And then the final stream, or not the final stream, but like the stream after will be like a big launch day stream, right? Where the whole game will be unlocked. We'll be going pretty hard. I have been pretty good about Zoetti in on streams before. I'm pretty sure I've won Zoetti the last couple of times. Furry stuff. Listen, I'm not gonna say that there's furries in the stream, because there are going to be furries in this stream. There's a lot of furries in Zoetti, in case you didn't know. But
The stream is falling apart, buddy. I can't close the do stuff together. Oh, there we go. It's closed. Sorry, I looked at the screen and like we had popped up into the top 2/3, and there was like the like do stuff together. We do this on Discord. That's our secret. But yeah.
So anyway, that is the thing that I am doing this week that I want to plug.
All right. Well, with that, I'm going to say until next time, dear listeners.
Until next time, loyal listeners.